Here's another great video discovered and brought to you by Quantum International. For your free report on the 7 biggest mistakes to avoid when investing in property, visit www.tipsforpropertyinvestment.com. Thanks and enjoy the video.
Hi, I'm Kim, and I want to tell you about how I first got started as an investor. It was in 1989, Robert came to me and he said, Kim, it's time you start investing. And I had no idea what the word meant. All I knew was something about stocks and mutual funds, but that was about it. And so Robert started to teach me what his rich dad taught him about investing, and specifically in real estate. And then he goes, okay, Kim, you're on your own. And so at the time we lived in Portland, Oregon, and we lived in a place called Eastmoreland, nice homes, but right next to it was a neighborhood called Westmoreland, which were the smaller houses, great for rental properties. So I'd spend my free time jogging around the neighborhood or bicycling around the neighborhood and starting to get a feel for the pricing, were there renters there, what was happening in the area, were people moving in, moving out. I would talk to real estate agents, talk to people that lived in the neighborhood, and I just started getting a feel for this one little neighborhood. And finally, one day, this property popped up, and it was a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and it was $45,000. And because I had been researching this area, I could tell that this could be a possible opportunity. So I knocked on the door, met with the agent, and I signed the offer saying, I'm offering this much money, and that gives me time to then figure out how I'm going to fund it, because I needed $5,000 as a down payment, which I didn't have. And it also gives me time to do my due diligence on the property, to check the property out for what was wrong with the property, what was right with the property. The problem was this. Once I signed that offer, reality set in. And all of a sudden, fear set in. And as I'm going through, checking out the property and walking on the roof and going in the basement, the bottom line was I was scared to death. I was, what if the tenant moves out? What if the roof starts leaking? What if my numbers are wrong? Or what if I made a mistake? And all of these thoughts are going through my head, and I find myself talking myself out of this deal. I'm finding all the reasons why I shouldn't do this deal, only because I was afraid, mostly of losing money, of making mistakes. And I've now come to learn that talking to so many first-time investors, that fear is really, really common. It's actually quite normal, because as you're starting out, there's so many unknowns and so many unexpected things that might come up, that knowing that if I had known that ahead of time, it would have been a lot easier. But I really had to face that fear. And finally, it came time to close on the property. I finally came up with the $5,000. And so I'm at the closing table the day I'm supposed to turn over that money. And here's the paper, the closing documents, and I start to sign them. And my hand is literally shaking like this. They could barely make out my signature. And then I had my $5,000 cashier's check in a death grip, and they had to pry my fingers open to get the check out. But the most important, even at that moment, I was ready to run. I was still going through all the what-ifs, because I was coming up with all the excuses I could come up with possibly to not have to do this deal and to not make the mistakes. The bottom line is, I finally sat down and went, I've done as much as I can. I think it's a good deal. I either have to step up to the line and cross it or back away. And so that was the biggest turning point really in my whole investing career, because that first deal, when I crossed that line and I did that first deal, that made all the difference. Because at that point, that one little 2-bedroom house, all of a sudden I started to become an investor. My very first month, after collecting the rent, paying the expenses, paying the mortgage, I put $25 positive cash flow in my pocket, and I was on my way. And that little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house is where I learned so much of the fundamentals. Yes, I made a lot of mistakes, lost some money, made some money, but I really learned the basics of what it takes to understand how to run rental property, how to be a real estate investor. And from that one little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, I went on to buy more and more and more property, where today I own thousands of units. But I had to cross that line. I had to face the fear, and I had to say, yeah, I'm going to do this. And so it was that little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, $45,000, $5,000 down, $25 a month cash flow, that got me started, got me on my way. So I'm very grateful for that little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house.